What's going on, everybody? Welcome back, y'all, to another stream. I hope everyone is doing well. Hope y'all are doing good. What's up, everybody? Let's see. We got tabletop. We have, let's see here, Clark. We have Justin. We have Alistair. We have Blissful. We have Bill. We have Chris coming in with a $10 super chat, man. Thank you so much, Chris. Before we even started, Chris coming in with the support, dude. That's really sweet of you, dude. Thank you so much for that, Chris. You are awesome, dude. That is greatly appreciated. But thank you. I really appreciate that, Chris. But what's up, everybody? Hope everyone's doing good. We got some new information here on the tropics for y'all. We just had a update here a little bit ago from the Hurricane Center. The last update we had was at 1:39 p.m. So this is a brand new spanking update for y'all. Storm's actually doing pretty good. You know, since yesterday, we were going to go live again, but I decided not to because we made that video. But essentially, the system's actually doing pretty well. I mean, we got some pretty deep convection going on here. It's definitely looking a lot more, you know, like a tropical cyclone at this point. You can see we do have a lot of really deep convection going on. And, you know, at this point in time, it is really working its way into those warmer waters. And also, the environment out here is plenty full of moisture. And, you know, there's really no wind shear acting against the storm here. So, you know, it's doing pretty good. The system itself here is actually slowed down a little bit here, which is moving west at 17 miles per hour. And currently sustained winds of about 60 miles per hour, gusting right around 70. So, you know, we are getting pretty close to gusting the tropical storm, or sorry, pretty close to gusting the hurricane force, but, you know, not quite there yet. But the system is rapidly picking up some strength here. By later on today, the 8 p.m. Forecast here has for later today the system becoming right around 65 miles per hour, and at that point we'll be likely gusting upwards to hurricane strength here once we approach later on this evening. So then we work our way further down into the cone. Now as we approach our way here for tomorrow morning, so Friday morning, this is where we are expecting it to transition from a tropical storm into a hurricane here. Sustained winds are right around 75 miles per hour, so, you know, low end category 1 here for tomorrow morning. And at that point, we're going to be gusting upwards of right around 90 miles an hour or so. And then, of course, we continue working our way even further to the west here. Just, you know, gradual strengthening is expected, becoming a category 2 here for the 16th on Saturday. And at that point in time, so 8 a.m. on Saturday, we do have the system here having sustained winds of right around 105 miles per hour, gusting upwards towards 130. So, you know, we're really starting to pick up some strength at this point. Now, the good news is that the system is forecasted to miss a lot of these islands out here, like Puerto Rico, you know, the Virgin Islands out there by the Antilles as well. You know, the system is going to be pulling to the north and away from those areas. However, there is likely going to be still some impacts for some of these regions here. We're kind of monitoring to see if there's going to be any tropical storm impacts. I mean, the waters out here, we already do have tropical storm warnings. I don't think these apply for, these do not apply yet for the areas of land. I wouldn't be entirely surprised if we did pull out at least some tropical storm watches because, you know, some of the models do suggest that we do get pretty close to some of those strong winds out here. But the waters themselves, you know, out here, you know, deep into the waters here, this is where we do have a lot of hurricane warnings in effect here and tropical storm warnings here, just for the waters, essentially. So, what's up, Ghosted? Good to see ya. What's up, Cole? Let's see here. Man Bear says, thanks for the update. Yeah, no problem. You're very welcome. Severe says, hey, Andrew, hope you're having a great week so far. How is, okay, so Severe, we're not going to really focus on, you know, severe weather right now. This is mostly a stream that we're focusing on, tropical cyclone. This is mostly just a stream for Erin, but yeah, we're not doing zip codes right now, my friend. Sorry. What's up, Mark? Good to see ya. Hope you're doing well. Let's see here. Ghosted says, very glad this thing is going back out to sea. It looks rough. Well, I mean, believe it or not, there's actually been quite a bit of models trending further west. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to, you know, impact anywhere. Because right now, I mean, we are still not entirely sure, you know, essentially where it's going to go after the cone. I mean, this thing could essentially still cause a risk for the U.S. East Coast as well as areas out by Bermuda, but it's not certain at this point. Like I've mentioned in previous streams and everything like that, overall, outside of the cone, it's a little bit hard to tell what's going to happen because at this point in time, there's a lot of uncertainty. I mean, you can already see how wide the cone is when we get to the end of the forecast here. Hurricane Center, look at this. Very close to Category 4 here, just northeast of the Bahamas, once we approach our way over here into the 19th, which that would be on Tuesday. So for Tuesday morning, the Hurricane Center has the storm here right around 130 miles an hour, sustained, gusting up to right around 155. Now, looking at the Safford-Simpson scale, which we'll go and pull up here, that is near Category 4. Category 4 starts at 130. I think that's at 129, if I'm not mistaken, or 127. What they have it as here. Let me go ahead and show you all this real quickly. I'm gonna go pull up the Safford-Simpson scale for y'all. So there you go. This is what we need to look for. So Category 1 starts at 74, and in the forecast we have this thing kind of getting up into upper level Category 3. Now, honestly, I ain't gonna be surprised if we do reach Category 4 with this system. I'm gonna go ahead and say it because, there's not a whole lot of limitations. Once we work our way over here into these waters, just north of like Puerto Rico, northeast of the Bahamas, and north of Dominican Republic and Haiti. These waters out here are extremely warm, for one. There's not a lot of wind shear, which would act against the storm and, disable or disrupted structure. Doesn't seem to be an issue either. And it also looks like it really will continue to hold a lot of its moisture here overall. So, especially once we work our way into these waters here, I would not be surprised if we see this even go up further. To be honest with you, I personally think it does have potential to become greater than Cat 3, but, as of right now, we just got to focus on what the Hurricane Center says. They have Category 3 at their maximum, but it is upper level Cat 3 here for the morning of the 19th at right around 8 o'clock a.m. or so. So, let's see here. Mr. Snow says the cone is already wrong. That is not true. So you can see the main convection is still within the within the cone, and you got to remember, just so you know, if you don't know, the cone is not where the effects of the storm are going to be felt. That's a big misconception with people, is that they think this is where the whole entire tropical cyclone is going to contain itself. That's not true. This is where the center of the tropical cyclone is expected to be in. So basically, the effects can absolutely still be felt outside of the cone. That's something that a lot of people don't fully understand, is that, yes, outside the cone, the effects are still very much possible. That's not where they're contained. Like I've mentioned, though, that's just kind of where the center of the storm is expected to track through it. I mean, you can kind of see where, the center of that convection, that deep thunderstorm activity within this system. You can see that lower level circulation going on here. The center is inside the cone, so I don't know what you're talking about there. Let's see here. Hi, I know it's a little early, but what can potential impacts to Bermuda? So, yeah, I mean, the full impacts for Bermuda is not really too known. However, honestly, regardless of how close it does go, it could actually have a bit of a concern, to those coastlines out there. Those waters will probably get pretty rough. Here, I'm going to go ahead and hop you guys over here to the models here. This is the GEFS. And so we're going to pull up the wave height here. Now, this is just one model, so, keep that in mind. Bermuda's that little speck right here. My crosshairs are. I know it's a little bit hard to see. Bermuda's just a tiny little dot on this map here. But we work our way down in time, and you can see, the system, regardless if it's, just west or if it's over Bermuda here, you can see that those waves are going to get pretty darn high. And if you look over here on the right-hand panel, you can actually see the key here. And out there by Bermuda, remember, this is one model. This is the GFS. One model, one run, so don't take it too seriously. But it does show, getting in above 20-foot waves. So we're going to likely see some really, really rough seas out there, regardless, of how close it does become to Bermuda. We'll just have to see. The latest models have been kind of guiding this thing slightly west of Bermuda now. Yesterday, around this time, when we did our update here, the models were kind of showing it towards Bermuda. but since then the models have shifted a lot further west. They've been continuing to shift further and further west with each run here. So anyways, let's do a little bit more of a deep dive into the models here. So this is the American GFS model, and over the next little bit, obviously from here on out, we're just going to see quite a bit of strengthening here. Once we approach our way over here, I'm going to go ahead and bring up my my pen here so I can draw on the screen for you guys. But once we approach our way into the waters out here in the Northern Caribbean, this is where I really believe that we're going to really undergo some rapid strengthening, because once again, there's really not much limiting factors here that's really going to slow the storm down or anything like that. Like those waters out there, these waters are a good 29, 30 degrees Celsius out there, which is, very, very warm for tropical cyclones. Typically for sustainability and strengthening for tropical systems, you need those sea surface temperatures to be at least 26 degrees Celsius, in which, over that water, those waters are about 29, once again, 30 degrees Celsius water. So it is very, very warm, and that's going to really absorb a lot of that heat, the energy, which will be to contain into that system there. So that's that. So, but yeah, once these kind of approach, or once the system does approach these waters, it's going to be pretty much all gas there. It's just going to continue to really rapidly strengthen. And the GFS really does show that here. You can see that pressure really dropping down low. The latest GFS here does have the system remaining west of Bermuda. The previous run before, you can see, was a little bit further to the east here. The last few models here, this is so each frame I'm doing is a different model run, but you can see that going forward in time, the models have been trending a little bit further westward. So we're just gonna have to monitor that. I mean, yeah, there is still time for things to change and stuff like that. So we'll have to just monitor that. So, but yeah, no, the GFS does have the system remaining here just west of Bermuda here overall. Now, looking at the Euro, the ECMWF here, this is the 06 UTC run here from this morning. Kind of agreeing with the GFS, just keeping this thing, mostly west of Bermuda. Models are hinting that this thing could, just squeeze between the U.S. and Bermuda and hopefully go out to sea. Nothing's final yet at that, at that length or at that distance. But we're just still going to have to watch it. I mean, regardless, at this point, there is going to be a lot of coastal concerns, possible swelling, definitely rip current issues. So being there at the beach could be a bit of a problem. Let's see here. Florida says that will be a hurricane tonight. It's already has an eye. No, it does not have an eye. We have a lot of deep convection that's going on in the storm here. Here, let me go ahead and show you. There is no visible eye yet. It still has some strengthening it needs to do. If you look at the latest infrared, you can see that it's just a big blob. Some high top towers out here. There is no clearing going on. So no, there is no eye in the system right now. But it is definitely picking up some strength fairly quickly. And by tomorrow, by later this evening, it's supposed to be right around the 63, 65 miles an hour sustained, which would put it about 10 miles an hour short of a hurricane. But no, in the forecast, we have it here becoming a hurricane here by tomorrow morning. So 8 a.m., this is where it becomes a hurricane, 75 sustained. So, I mean, who knows? Who knows? We could go under a spell of rapid intensification. It happens. I've seen it happen many times. I wouldn't rule it out happening tonight. But yeah, to the eye thing, no, there is no visible eye right now. Let's see here. Can we rule out a direct impact on New York City? No, we cannot, but we can also not worry about it. Anything beyond the cone, like I've mentioned, you guys, is a little bit tricky because the models are really all over the place here, So anything beyond this cone is unknown territory. The system, the models can easily change this beyond this point, essentially. So that's that. But yeah, anything beyond the cone, we cannot really focus on too much. We just got to focus on right now here inside of the cone. But yeah, like I mentioned though, that this thing is expected to to develop here into a major hurricane as we approach our way over here into the morning of the 17th. which that would be here for Sunday. So yeah, this weekend, this is when we're going to actually expect to see this system turn in from a hurricane to a major hurricane, which if you don't know, they classify major hurricanes as Category 3 or greater. And we are expecting on the forecast track to become a Cat 3 once we approach our way over here into, once again, the morning of the 17th. Okay, so we'll continue watching it. And once again, I would not honestly be surprised if we even get stronger than Category 3. Once again, like I've mentioned, because of the conditions that are out here. I mean, I'll go ahead and show you guys on the models here to kind of back up my claim here a little bit. So let's actually hop our way over here. We're going to look at the West Atlantic here, zoom in a little bit. So, I mean, yeah, like models like the GFS, once we approach these waters, have rapid intensification here. Sometimes the models can't fully pick up on those rapid intensification episodes. But, in terms of the wind shear and everything like that, looking at the kinematics, the winds flowing through the atmosphere, looking at that, the only thing that we really have going on is that upper level venting, which is typical in tropical cyclones. A little bit of a fun fact for you guys if you didn't know. Tropical cyclones in the lower atmosphere, they rotate counterclockwise in the northern hemisphere. And as you go up in altitude, they actually start to rotate clockwise. So it's like a big corkscrew. So basically, this is the venting. All the air that goes in the storm has to go out. And it does so in those upper elevations. And that's essentially kind of what we're seeing here on the wind shear. But honestly, really not seeing any heavy wind shear, acting against the storm. I mean, you can see up to the north here, there's a big jet, but that's far down in time. Stuff like that could change. But wind shear related, yeah, I mean, there's really nothing that's going to be really, acting too much against the storm, I don't believe. Now, also looking at the moisture levels and everything like that, the latest GFS has it possibly rolling into maybe a little bit more drier air, but it also kind of, regains itself once we work our way over here. But that's just one model run. Remember, that's just a singular model run suggesting that. But we do continue to work our way over here to the north, and, we still do contain a fair amount of moisture here. Like looking at those SKU-T charts, you can see that they're mostly saturated. In this level, we have a little bit of drier air towards the ground, but, that's just that. So basically what you're looking at here is the amount of moisture. The brown areas here represent some drier air, which if I grab a sounding here, you can see that we do have a pretty big spacing between our dew point here on the SKU-T and our temperature here. The temperature line's the red, the green is the dew point. There's a pretty big spacing indicating drier air. But yeah, once you go into the blue here, the bluish green, you can see that they're a lot closer together, meaning that there is more moisture. Humidity's higher throughout these altitudes and everything like that. So that will be enough moisture to sustain the storm here. But anyways, yeah, I mean, once it works its way into those waters here, I mean, it definitely looks like it has really good potential to really kick up in strength here, which is something that we definitely really need to look out there for. Let's see here. Any upcoming recon missions for Erin? I believe so, yes. I did hear something that they're going to launch later today. I'm not sure if they're in there now. I do know there's a mission going into, let's see here. Oh, you know what? Hold on a minute. I think there's one going out now, if I'm not mistaken. Here, let me bring it all over here real quickly. So this is from Tropical Tidbits here. You can see this is the storm. I think this is the one, that disturbance, the other disturbance we have in the Gulf. I think they're investigating that right now. The probabilities, by the way, have increased on that system here. You can actually see yesterday they were at a 10-20 chance of formation. So, 10% chance for the next 48 hours and, 20% chance the next 7 days. But that's actually updated now. We now have an overall 40-40. So, still unlikely to fully develop. But, a short-lived depression cannot be ruled out here. Hurricane Center, let's see. Yeah, they're investigating the system. Tropical depression could form before the system moves inland. So, I mean, regardless of its formation, there's probably going to be quite a bit of rain associated with it. I mean, this thing's been convecting pretty heavily for a couple days now. We were tracking this thing once it was just east of the Yucatan Peninsula. And once it rolled over here, it's, definitely kind of organized a little bit. But, yeah, there's a little bit of chances this thing could, turn into maybe a weak depression or a brief depression, I should say. So we'll just have to see. Let's see here. Brian says, be careful what information you look at. There's a lot of hype posts. Absolutely. Yeah, I've mentioned that a lot on my previous streams. Like I've mentioned, if you see any thing right now of any hurricane, any model hitting the United States. Don't believe it because it's still a little far out, for one. Yeah, a lot of people have been spreading a lot of misinformation and stuff. And also, like I've mentioned before in previous streams here, so when looking at the forecast, here, let me bring up something to show you guys real quickly. This is how you can kind of tell if it's hype or if it's within reasonable standpoint. So bringing this up here, y'all. Actually, here, I'm going to bring it over here to you guys. Why not? So when looking at these posts, you see something that says F and then the 3 different numbers. So this is actually your forecast hour, showing you how many hours the in particular image you're looking at is. So on a lot of those hype forecasts, you see that hour being above like 200 to 300. That's way too far out the forecast. You can see that, a lot of those hype forecasts typically go like really far out. So keep an eye on that number. Forecast hour, 384, that is way too far out. And a lot of those crazy model runs that people love to post, will show that because it is way too far out. No, honestly, you really shouldn't look at anything, in my opinion, but anything past 150. I like to forecast between 100 to 150. Anything beyond that can be a little iffy. But yeah, just keep an eye on the forecast hour. That is very, very important here. Okay, very important. And a lot of people like to hype and just post false, claims, and I also just like to post hype model runs, which anything beyond this point just gets kind of crazy sometimes. So just want to let y'all know, just want to give you guys a little bit of a heads up for that. But anyways, what is the percentage of this keeping more west towards the Bahamas? Well, I mean, I don't have an exact percentage for you, but I can tell you the models have been shifting west, it seems, for the last several runs. That is a bit of a trend. Is it going to continue? Only time will tell. Only time will tell if it'll continue. But for now, no, there is no immediate impacts for the Bahamas right now. But, it wouldn't hurt to keep an eye on it. Like I mentioned before as well, y'all, is that there is going to be the possibility that we could have some pretty high waves. I mean, even for the Bahamas here. Like, let me go ahead and show you. This is once again, the GFS model here, showing the wave height. By the way, if you want to look, you can see the table on the right here that shows you how many feet you're looking at. So in the forecast model from the latest run of the GFS, you can actually see that some of those islands out there in the Bahamas, could get some pretty high-end amounts of water. Some pretty big waves and whatnot. So that's likely going to be a concern for a lot of the U.S. East Coast too. You can see the forecast hour 144. It's within reasonable standpoint. It is also just one model, so you can't take it too serious, but. More than likely, there is going to be some type of coastal issues for a lot of the U.S. East Coast, and even areas like Bahamas and a lot of the Caribbean islands, even Bermuda, likely going to have some pretty rough waves, and because a system of this strength and this magnitude can really move around some water, in which that'll cause potential for some coastal concerns. Once again, rip currents, maybe some coastal flooding in some areas, stuff like that. We're going to have to look out there for. But I don't have an exact percentage. Do I think it's possible to hit Florida? I say the probability is very unlikely at this point, but whenever it comes to it, anything beyond the cone, like I've mentioned before, it's just a little bit hard to tell what it's going to do. The models have been trending further west, but currently Florida is in no danger. I don't think it's a really big probability that Florida gets hit, to be honest. At least from the models I'm seeing now, it's very unlikely. Very, very unlikely. Brian says, hey, Andrew, I'm in my second year of meteorology at OSU. Awesome, dude. Good job. Scott says, what's with all the dry, dusty air? Isn't it supposed to die down in August? Well, I haven't really been paying too much attention to it. I know there's been a lot of dust going off and stuff like that, but, honestly, with this in particular system, it doesn't really look like moisture is going to be too much of a problem here. We're going to hop you guys back over to models here, show y'all. GFS, here, let's actually look at some other models. So this is Euro here. So Euro, also still has a system containing a pretty good amount of moisture. One thing I'm starting to notice, though, is that Euro shows a little bit of drier air on the western side of the storm here for the 17th. This is in the evening here. So the GFS has kind of picked up on that, too. Maybe a little bit of dry air. It's just a little bit hard to tell. We'll have to look, but for the most part, I don't think it would be enough to really alter the storm too much. The GFS run here, the latest, 12 UTC, has it just punching straight through that with little to no problems. But still, becoming quite a strong storm. Yeah, I think we're going to be at our strongest point once we approach these waters out here, and just north of the Caribbean, east of the Bahamas. I think this is where we're going to have some of the strongest of the storm here. Now, let me go ahead and show you guys like the waters out here, because that's one of the big things. It's not the only thing that contributes to tropical formation and stuff like that, but the waters though is definitely very important for forecasting tropical activity. And so with the track here, having the storm kind of go this direction, you can see that it's going to be rolling into those waters. That's a good 30 degrees Celsius, which that is very, very warm. Like I've mentioned before, anything above 26 Celsius is pretty good, giving enough heat into the system, in which, we're having 30 degrees Celsius waters, which is very, very, very warm. So that will be no problem at all for the hurricane. Honestly, based off of the sea surface temperatures, that is a lot. And like I mentioned, if the other conditions are favorable, which they appear fairly favorable, would not be surprised if we do undergo some rapid intensification once we work our way into these waters here. But yeah, no, waters are super, super warm out there. Now, I do want to go ahead and show y'all the, here, let's bring up the spaghetti models here. So there's the latest spaghetti models. You can see the latest runs here having this thing just west of Bermuda. Yesterday's runs actually had it, hitting towards Bermuda. But you can see ever since then we've noticed that the models do kind of track further to the west. At this point in time, the system going out to sea is very possible. It's been kind of talking like this for several days now. So that little speck you see there, that's Bermuda. That right there is Bermuda. And then obviously we have, Puerto Rico. We have some of the Bahamas. And you can see that the system just kind of remains fairly offshore from these areas here. Now, remember, there still is room for changes. As we continue working westward, you can see that the spaghetti models for at least the first 3 days, up to 72 hours here, are pretty close to one another. There's a pretty close margin here that's showing us that, hey, the models are in fair agreement here for at least the next 3 days, in terms of where the center of this storm will track. But you can see once we go beyond that point of like a good 3 to 5 days out or so, that the spaghetti models really start to kind of diverge. They really start to spread out here. But all the models as of right now from the 12 UTC run, which is the latest we got, does show the system kind of remaining just west of Bermuda. However, even indirectly, there could be some big impacts for some of those regions here, regarding coastal concerns, like high waves, rip currents, stuff like that could still be an issue. We're still not 100% certain on the full effects for Bermuda, given it is still several days out, but I do need you guys to definitely keep an eye out there for that. And then, of course, in terms of intensity, so we're looking at the same models, but just, looking at the intensity guidance here, you can see that it's just really all over the place, The intensity guidance is just really, really all over the place here. I don't know why it's kind of cut off. This is a little bit of a weird one. But anyways, there has been a little bit more support of, possibly above Cat 3. Majority of the models has this thing, still showing gradual strengthening over the next few days. This is in time here. So 24 hours out from now, or from 12 UTC, which would be an hour, or which would be a day out there. 48 hours, 72 hours, 3 days, and so on. But yeah, just gradual development. All the models do support some gradual development here overall. And, a lot of models are well into major hurricane status, well in the Category 3. And you can see that, once again, there's a little bit of support of even greater. And honestly, I wouldn't rule out potential of this thing becoming maybe a low in Cat 4. I think it is a good possibility. Because once it works in those waters there, like I said, there's not going to be a whole lot that's going to stop it overall. So we'll have to definitely look out for that. Erin says, is it possible to hit Southeast Virginia? It's very unlikely at this point, but we cannot rule anything out completely. Like I said, anything beyond the cone, we cannot rule out. It's a little bit in la-la land beyond the cone. Anything beyond this point is just too early to tell. So, what's up, Justin? Good to see you, my friend. Hope you're doing well. dropping. Don't be scared. It'll be all right. We'll get through it. You know, right now there's no immediate danger for anywhere in the U.S. Or really anywhere as of right now in terms of, you know, significant impacts. So right now it's just kind of squeezing between the areas of land here, but, you know, we'll keep an eye on the forecast. But, yeah, don't be scared. Just be weather aware and, you know, just stay monitoring it. It's all we can do. All we can do. Just don't be scared. It'll be all right. Let's see here. Gabriel says, I think we can rule out anything not showing Category 3. Well, you know, yeah, I really do believe this thing is going to be, obviously, at least Cat 3, but I would not be surprised if it is even higher. So we'll have to see. Lenore says, thanks for keeping us informed. Of course. What's up, Calvin? Good to see you. Once it curves around, where do they think it'll go? Too far out to tell. You know, like I mentioned, anything beyond the cone, y'all, it's very important to know anything after this point is unknown because, you know, anything beyond this point, models change so frequent that it, you know, we can't look any further because of how inconsistent and how inaccurate it is, you know. So that's why it's very important. Just keep our eyes on the cone here. So let's go ahead and hop our way back into some more models, y'all. We're going to take a look at the HWRF run here. This is the 12 UTC is finally rendering. So go ahead and pull this up here. So let's hop y'all over to that. So here's the HWRF. You know, we work way down in time. Obviously, you know, gradual strengthening. The time's in the top left here. You know, the Hurricane Center has the system becoming a Category 1 once again by tomorrow morning. Wouldn't be surprised if it's, you know, late tonight, but we'll have to see what happens. HWRF, you know, just gradual strengthening. There's Puerto Rico right here. You can see this will be, you know, for the 16th. This is for the evening of the 16th here. It kind of rolls just north of those areas here, and then just, you know, once it works in those waters, rapidly intensifies. You know, looking at the infrared, you can see this thing has quite the eye, according to HWRF, but it's also HWRF. This model can be a little nuts sometimes. So, but I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it doesn't look, or I wouldn't be surprised if it looks something similar to that, though, you know, at some point. But anyways, but yeah, a lot of the worst of the effects you can see are just going to be north of the Virgin Islands, you know, north of Puerto Rico. Could definitely still see some of those bands there. You know, some of that convection could absolutely still possibly make its way out there by some of those islands here. Looking at that lower level, you know, the lower level winds and stuff like that, it kind of shows most of those tropical storm force winds just north of the islands here, you know, up there towards the north. You know, we could get maybe, I mean, according to this model, could get near tropical storm force. Wouldn't be surprised if they added some tropical storm watches for some of those extreme northern islands here soon. We'll have to see what happens, though. That's not guaranteed. But yeah, as we continue going further, there's part of the Bahamas there. As we continue going further, the wind field gets bigger too. So basically the energy starts spreading out. So not only is it getting stronger, but it's getting wider at this point in time, you know, because those waters are very warm, has tons of heat, using that heat as energy. And, you know, that's going to really start to, you know, cause the system to, you know, continue to hold and pick up some of that strength here overall. So let's see. Calvin, yeah, we are watching that other system. We talked about it here a little bit ago. So we do have this guy over here has a 40% chance of overall formation. You know, this little guy, this little blob right now could turn into a short-lived depression, but I'm not too worried about it right now. I mean, we'll definitely keep an eye on it. You know, we can't just ignore it, but yeah, not as concerned about this one as obviously we are for Erin here, but we'll keep an eye on it. You know, regardless of that system, whatever it does, it's probably going to bring some pretty heavy rains for some of Mexico and stuff like that. So, but we'll look more into that here in a little bit. You know, over time, I should say. What's up, Hockey? Good to see you. Hopefully you're doing well. But guys, if you're new to the channel, consider leaving a like, hitting that subscribe button. It'll be greatly appreciated. Just want to say thank you all for joining us. You know, just please be careful out there. Like I said, right now there's no immediate danger for anybody right now. And you know, right now there's no reason to panic and everything like that. So, you know, don't do that. There's no reason to panic. So looking at the satellite view now, once again, you guys can see, I mean, it's looking pretty decent here. You know, it's definitely convecting pretty heavily. You can see some pretty big burst here of convection, towards the center here. It's definitely getting itself pretty organized here overall. Once again, currently the storm central pressure is down to 999 millibars, moving to the west at 17 miles an hour, and the current sustained winds is at 60 miles per hour. So at this point in time, it's kind of a mid-level tropical storm. Yesterday, around this time, I think it was 45 sustained. Now we're clocking in at 60, so we've gained 15 mile an hour sustained winds here. So it's definitely picking up some strength, and it's just going to continue to do that from here on out, essentially. But anyways, yeah, let's hop back to models. We're going to take a look at a few other models here. But yeah, that was the HWRF we just looked at here a few minutes ago. Let's actually hop our way over here to the HMON now. So here's another model. Obviously, it's good to take a look at multiple models and stuff like that. But we work our way down in time. Honestly, the HMON, I think, keeps things pretty far away from those islands there, but still shows rapid strengthening with the system here. Also shows the system itself growing too. Like I mentioned, not only is it strengthening, but it's also getting wider. So it's spreading out a lot more of that energy there. But, by the time we approach the 19th, according to the HMON, this is 126 hours out. It does have the low possibly down into the 930s, which, most models kind of suggest that, that pressure getting down into the 940s or whatnot, seems very possible. But, yeah, but this in particular model shows 930, which is definitely pretty darn low. Looking at the moisture, like I mentioned, there's a lot of moisture involved in this system. Once it continues working through, it doesn't look like moisture is going to be too much of an issue here. Once we just kind of pass north of the Virgin Islands and whatnot, there could be a little bit of dry air on the western side, but still contains a plentiful amount of moisture. But once we work our way deeper into the waters, it kind of, pulls back and grabs a lot more moisture, as the system does get bigger here. So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty consistent on the models, of just rapid strengthening, once we approach these waters here. Let's look at the HAFS-A parent. This one zooms out a lot further, so you guys can kind of see things a little bit better here. So, looking at the moisture here and everything, once again, gradual westerly movement. It's going to be a hurricane as it just passes north of, or northeast of Puerto Rico, north of the Antilles. Should just be north, but there could be some coastal impacts, like I've mentioned, some big waves and stuff like that for some of those islands out there. So, that is something that we do need to look into. And I wouldn't be surprised if they added some watches for some of those extreme northern islands there, like tropical storm watches. We'll have to see, though. I mean, that's up to the Hurricane Center, and we'll just continue monitoring. But it does get pretty close, but it should just remain to the north there. But then we just continue gradually working our way westward. Then we start to turn to the north, according to HAFS, here right around the 18th. We start to pull a little bit to the north here. But, like I mentioned, once it pulls its way into, these waters out here, it could really start to pick up some strength overall. Looking at the infrared here, you could see, for at least a little bit, we could definitely get a pretty nice looking little eye there. A lot of the models do suggest it. Would not be surprised. But anyways, yeah, also like wind shear and stuff. It doesn't seem like there's going to be hardly any wind shear acting against the storm. So basically what you're looking at here is, this is all just like I said earlier, this is all just that upper level venting. The air that goes in the hurricane needs to go out. So in the lower atmosphere, it pulls in the air counterclockwise. And in the upper atmosphere, it actually vents the air clockwise, which is pretty neat. So it's like a big corkscrew, like I've mentioned. Pretty neat how these systems work. But yeah, nothing more than just that upper level, venting going on there. So, that's not going to really do too much for that storm, I don't believe. So, between that, really warm waters out here. I mean, you can see those waters are, a good 29, 30 degrees Celsius. You can actually see the tropical system as it rolls through could actually cool down some of those waters. That's another thing about tropical systems is that, they can actually cool down the water just a little bit, kind of leaving a streak behind. But, the water that it is rolling into, not an issue at all. Not an issue at all. All right. Let's see here. See, I'm from St. Kitts. Let's see, a northern Leeward Island. What should we expect from the hurricane? Any advice? Let me pull up St. Kitts. I'm not exactly familiar with where that's at, but I can pull it up here. Hold on a minute. St. Kitts. Maybe it'll pull it up here. Hold on. Yeah, I'm not exactly here. Let me bring you guys over here real quickly. I'm not exactly entirely too sure where that's at. So I tried looking it up, it just didn't bring it up here. See, you're on the northern Leeward Islands here. Let me try pulling up this. Is it? Ah, here we go. Found it. Got it. Perfect. So you're up here. So what I was mentioning earlier, for these areas here, one thing that I would really look into is potential like coastal concerns, like high waves, rip currents and stuff like that. The system, though, should remain to your north. And according to the models here, it doesn't really look like that those tropical storm conditions are going to get really out there. So, things should remain fairly good. But I'd still keep an eye on the models. There has been a little bit of changes lately. Right now, the cone is just to your north, though, so the center of the storm is not expected to go anywhere near you. But still, could have some coastal concerns, some coastal flooding potential in some areas. It just depends on how strong, how big, and, ultimately where it tracks, essentially. There still is still needs to be monitored. But I wouldn't say any really big impacts as of right now are expected. If there's any tropical storm warnings, watches, anything that gets issued, we'll let you know. But as of now, they don't even have that here. But wouldn't be surprised if they maybe added some of those for those extreme northern islands up here by the Virgin Islands. Wouldn't be too surprised, because some models do suggest that could be, just kind of grazing the tropical storm force for some of those northern islands. But we'll see. Let's see here. Brady says it's going to be a close call, probably. Well, like I said, we can't look anything beyond the cone. We're just going to have to monitor it. And that's something that's very important, you guys. Is like I mentioned before, you cannot look anything beyond the cone without some form of accuracy. Anything beyond the cone. I know a lot of people want to know what it's going to do once it gets here. Trust me, I do too. But anything beyond this point is just pushing it, and it's really not very accurate, anything beyond the cone. So everything in the cone is where we just need to focus on it now, because things can change. But anyways, like I've mentioned, where it's at now, definitely we're convecting pretty good. Once again, just a little bit of an update on it right now. It is currently a tropical storm, sustained winds here of 60 miles per hour. Central low is down to 999 millibars here, moving to the west at 17 miles per hour. So that's currently what it's doing here. We are expecting the storm to become a hurricane tomorrow. So tomorrow we are expecting this thing to become a hurricane here. Sustained winds of 75 for tomorrow morning, right at 8 a.m. Eastern. So, that's kind of when we're expecting that to become a hurricane. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if late tonight it has potential to become a hurricane. At the rate that it's been strengthening, we'll have to see. But yeah, generally speaking, the Hurricane Center expects this thing to become a hurricane here by tomorrow morning. So then we continue working westward here. You can see, we start approaching some of those islands out there. But once again, the system's just going to remain to the north there. There could be some, coastal concerns, especially rip currents and maybe some minor coastal flooding and some big waves and stuff like that could be a concern. But yeah, generally the system's core stays away from those islands here, which is good. The center remains inside of the cone here. That's once again, this is not where the projected effects are going to be at. But this is just kind of where the center of the storm could go through, if that makes sense. So the center of the storm is expected to remain within these boundaries here. But yeah, the system does become forecasted to become a Category 2 here for the morning of the 16th, which that would be there for Saturday. So on Saturday morning, we're going to be upgrading probably to a Category 2 at this point. We just got to monitor it and see how it handles and how it performs. And then, of course, becoming a Category 3 here by the morning of the 17th here. So that would be for Sunday. So definitely do need to look out there for that. And right around Sunday morning, current forecast has this thing sustained at 115 miles an hour. In terms of gusts, we're getting up to right around 140 miles an hour or so. And then, like I said, from there, the cone really starts to widen because of the uncertainty here. But as of right now, the center is expected to remain somewhere inside of these margins here, overall. But on the last end of the forecast track here for the morning of the 19th, this thing is shy Category 4. That is a Cat 3, but it is right next to Cat 4 strength here. This is for the 19th. So Tuesday morning, like I mentioned, the Hurricane Center has it sustained right around 130 miles an hour or so. So, definitely got to keep an eye on it. Let's see. We are in for a rough hurricane season, USA. Yeah, I think we have a good potential. It had a little bit of a slow start, but yeah, I mean, things are finally starting to kick off. Usually it goes from 0 to 100 real quickly, which it has been, It started raining here today. Is it associated with the hurricane? No, the system's way far out. You can see, so here's the... here's where you're at. So you're over here in these islands. You can see a little bit of convection, a little bit of storm activity out here. Now, the system you can see is well far to the east here. That is not associated with that system. Let's see. But anyways. I mean, I wouldn't say the East Coast is at high risk right now. All I would say is that the East Coast should monitor the storm here. There is no imminent danger for anybody in the United States at this time. So there's no reason for panic. There's no reason for, mass buying out grocery stores or anything like that. No, that's not needed. Obviously, if that becomes a concern, we'll let you know. But at the current moment, from the knowledge that we know, based, from the models and everything like that, as of right now, there's no current concern for the United States. But we'll have to... We'll continue watching it here. Let's look back at those models here. I do want to pull up some of the GEPS and the GFS ensembles here. So let's bring up the GEPS first. So this is some of the ensembles here showing the track. I mean, a lot of the models here, including the hurricane models, really want that curve to occur, which at this point seems fairly likely. We continue working our way to the northwest here. You can see, most of the models, you can see just how spread out they are, though. That's why it's really important to say anything beyond this point is just very unknown. Just because of how big of a spread there is. There's a lot of uncertainty there. That's why we can't look at any further there. But, the median there does want the system to kind of pull out to sea here. But once again, still a really, really big spread there on those models. Here's the GFS or the GEFS ensembles here. So just a different model, bunch of members here. Kind of showing the same thing. A relatively big spread. Kind of once we approach these waters out here. Storm's all the way down here. I mean, it's got a little bit to travel. But yeah, I mean, you could see one thing I will tell you is that they have moved west since yesterday. This little speck right there, that's Bermuda. Yesterday, the models were kind of showing something like this, a lot further east, but yeah, who knows? I mean, it could shift back. I think we're going to learn a lot more about the system once the hurricane hunters investigate it, once we start doing dropsons into it, because they're going to plug in that dropson data into those models, like the HWRF, and they're going to load it, and they're going to kind of, the models will get a little bit of a power up, essentially, because, the data that we get from the system itself. So we'll see. But yeah, I mean, you could just see how much things still spread out, You see everything's just all over the place here. It's why anything beyond the cone is just too early to tell. Just way, way, way too early to tell. Then, of course, lastly, we do have the hurricane models. Remember, these do frequently change, too, especially, in the later portion. But, at least we do have a pretty good amount of agreement for the next 3 days, up to 72 hours out. This next 3 days, we have a pretty solid idea on where the thing's going to go here. It'll continue going northwest, but once again, as we kind of approach that days 3 to 5, you can see that things really start to kind of diverge, start to spread out here. But we'll see. Once again, there's Bermuda there, the little speck. Bermuda's so tiny compared to the map here. But anyways, so that's that. Once again, there's no imminent danger for Bermuda or for the United States. However, I do need those areas to watch it closely still. Things can change, and this is a rapidly evolving situation here. Things are constantly changing. Like I've mentioned, the trend lately has been further west. I've been seeing with some models. Does that mean it's going to continue trending west? who knows? You know, anything beyond this point is too far out, and I cannot say it enough here. So once again, final time. Anything beyond this cone here, y'all, is just too early to tell. I have no idea, Brady. Let's see here. You have a feeling that the Bermuda high will be stronger than expected to push it inland. I mean, it's too hard to tell. It's too early to tell, my friend. Here, let's dive back to some of these models here. Actually, I want to pull up some of these we haven't looked at here. So we looked at GFS. You know, once again, this is one model run. Has the system just north of the Virgin Islands. Continues to the northwest. We do have that Bermuda high pushed far to the east here. We do have another high up here in Canada, as you can see. But, you know, this is 150 hours out. Anything beyond this point gets a little bit tricky. But GFS does steer it away from Bermuda, away from the United States. But, you know, can't take that too serious right now because of it's still several days out. So that can still change. Looking over at Euro here, we have the 06 UTC run. This is the latest one we got. But, you know, Euro kind of agrees to, has it kind of pulling to the north. You know, both models agree on that. Keeping it west of Bermuda, just offshore the U.S. East Coast here, according to Euro. But it ends right there at 144 hours. CMC, on the other hand, CMC, actually, that's really weird, has another low developing, a non-tropical low, looks like. But has... you know, that system continuing northwest. This model actually has it getting pretty close to the Virgin Islands out there, according to CMC. Continue working to the northwest. This one has it getting a little bit closer to Bermuda. You can see there's Bermuda right there, just west of Bermuda. CMC has it kind of pulling out. So, and of course we have Icon, the 12 UTC Icon model. Okay, so Icon actually, whoa, what the heck? Obviously, Icon's a lot different than the other models. Has the system actually getting really close to the Bahamas there. But remember, the other three models didn't really suggest that. So that's kind of an outcast there. But anyways. But dude, Icon is aggressive. Holy cow. Icon is like the most aggressive model I've seen so far. So can't automatically assume the worst here. But sheesh. See, can't look at the moisture and everything like that, but the wind field does get pretty big. Anyways, so that's that. Here, let's pull up the HFS-A. We have not. I don't think we looked at the HFS-A, or maybe we did. Let's look at the HFS-B parent model. So here's another model. Obviously, like I said, it's good to look at more than one model, so you can kind of get multiple opinions on what's going to happen here. So the HFS-B model has the thing working its way westward. Which we're going to have to keep an eye out there for. Keeping things just, once again, north of the Virgin Islands, north of Puerto Rico. Continues working northwest out there, just east of the Bahamas. And then anything beyond this point, it's where the model ends. So, you know, that's anything's unknown at that point. Or everything's unknown past this point, pretty much. Wow. Once again, wind shear. Doesn't seem to be too much of an issue here. I mean... all of this that you see, this is all that upper level venting. Once again, this is all that, you know, all that venting essentially. We have the lower levels pulling in the air and it spins counterclockwise. Upper levels spreads out and goes clockwise. Let's see here. My middle name is Erin. I got you. Well, this is your storm then, I guess. We got a lot of Erins in here. Jeez. Ghosted, you're Erin too? Is it spelt the way the name is? Like Erin? I know there's a lot of Erins with an A. But Erin, it sounds like Erin and Erin. It's the same. Erin with an E, I don't think I've ever really heard. Let's see here. Justin says she would definitely, most definitely explode if she did. We'll go into golf. So as of now, there is no guidance of this thing getting anywhere near the Gulf. I don't think it's going to hit the Gulf. No. Because more than likely this thing is just going to stick out and probably kind of shoot out the sea. But nothing's final. Nothing's final. Let me bring y'all back to the models again. So this is the spaghetti models. Everybody loves those spaghetti models here. So, you know, but like I mentioned before here, you know, through the next 72 hours, you can see the models are pretty tight. They're pretty close together, right? So that's showing us that there is a pretty good amount of agreement here, you know, in terms of the track of the system and ultimately what it's going to end up doing here. But like I mentioned, anything beyond this point, like 3 to 5 days out, it starts to spread out quite a bit. So not only do we got to focus on these models, but we also got to watch the trends in which the models change. Let me pull up some of the older runs here. That was let's do 18 UTC. Was this from yesterday? Okay, so yeah, this was 18 UTC from yesterday. You can see that it had the models just slightly west of Bermuda. Most of those models between like 70 and 65 degrees west, right? You can see between 70 and 65 had it kind of going there. Now, look at the new models, the 12 UTC. So, you know, did I say between 60 and 65? Unless I already forgot. No, did I say 65, 70? I forgot I already said. It's just an Andrew moment. But yeah, you can see that it did move a lot further west here with these new runs. You know, that's actually been pretty common for the last several days, actually. It's just been kind of pushing further and further west. But like I said, is it going to continue doing that? Who knows? Who knows? The best we can do is just take it day by day. And but all that you guys need to know right now is that there is currently nobody, you know, there's currently nobody that's under imminent danger right now with this system, you know. Currently, there's no tropical storm warnings or watches for any area of land. We do have some hurricane warnings and tropical storm warnings in effect for the waters, but not for the land areas here. Let me bring y'all back over here. So these boxes that you guys see here, these are tropical storm and hurricane warnings here. You can see, yeah, this guy over here is tropical storm. But this, once again, this does not apply for the islands. This is just for the waters. Mostly talking about how rough those waters could get. But yeah, hurricane warnings, the reason that they're big boxes like this is because it's on a grid system. You know, they can't specifically like fine tune it down to whatever size or whatever shape they want. It's a grid system, so they select the tiles that correspond to these waters here. Does that make sense? So I would not recommend surfing. No. You know, another thing is, like I mentioned, y'all, I know it's tempting with the big waves and stuff, but you also got to remember there is going to be bad rip currents. If you surf, you better know what a rip current is. And there's going to be some pretty bad ones with this system, you know. A system like this loves to really slosh up the waters. Thank you, Daly. I appreciate that. Let's see here. Warning for the water. I don't think sea life is going to get the alert. Okay, that's pretty funny. No, it's for the boaters out there. Anybody who's traveling in the water is basically telling mariners to avoid those areas. That's pretty good, dude. That's pretty good. I ain't gonna lie. When is 98L supposed to landfall? So, like I said, we've been seeing some growing support with this here. Let me look at the models. I don't think there's. Is there any full-on models? Oh, here we go. HWRF. Okay. Looks like landfall is probably going to be around the 15th. Tomorrow afternoon-ish. There you go. So here's HWRF. Just, like I said, doesn't really have time to do anything here. You know? Doesn't really have any time to rapidly change or rapidly strengthen. I mean, a little load develops, though. Nothing more than just a bunch of storms, basically. HWRF doesn't really have much with it. HMON, not even an organized low. HAFS-A does not have it for. Okay, yeah. That's not 98L, by the way. that's Erin. But yeah, it looks like the landfall is going to be here for tomorrow afternoon with that other system. Not for Erin, by the way, for 98L. But you know, like I mentioned, I'm not super worried about that system. 40% chance overall formation has gone up, but yeah. Do we know the path yet? Says Drew. So everything in the cone here is as much as we know right now. Anything outside the cone is in La La Land and is in big uncertainty beyond the cone right now. Here, let's go ahead and talk about the cone again. We'll go ahead and update you guys on everything. So right now, let's talk about what the storm's doing right now, okay? Right now, it's a tropical storm, sustained winds of 60 miles an hour, moving to the west at 17. And the central pressure is down now into the 990s, 999 millibars. So continuing moving westward. On the satellite imagery, we got some really deep convection towards the center, indicating some strengthening and good sustainability. System's doing pretty good. Overnight, this thing is expected to strengthen a little bit. Expected to become sustained by 8 p.m. around sustained by 8 p.m. Right around 65 mile per hour, gusting upwards towards hurricane strength. Now tomorrow morning, that's where they have the system becoming a hurricane. Hurricane Center has this thing at Cat 1 tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. At that point in time, will be sustained at 75, gusting up to 90-ish, 92-ish, what they show here. So I'm going to tell you this. I wouldn't be entirely shocked if this thing did possibly become a hurricane tonight, like late tonight. I can't rule it out. But we'll just have to see what happens. It continues working westward over the next few days. And, of course, as we approach the morning of the 16th, which that is going to be on Saturday. My bad. Saturday morning, we're going to go from a Cat 1 to a Cat 2. It's going to be upgraded. Sustained winds of right around 105 miles an hour, gusting upwards of right around 130. Then we transition into Category 3 as we just pass north of the Virgin Islands, north of Puerto Rico, here for the morning of the 17th, which that would be on Sunday. So Sunday morning, at that point, that's when we are expected the system to become a Category 3 on the forecast track for 8 a.m. on Sunday. Sustained winds of 115, gusting up to 140. Category 3. Then we continue deeper into some of those northern Caribbean waters. Still continuing to strengthen as those waters don't really cool down, of course. They actually get a lot warmer. Those waters out here are like 29 degrees Celsius, which, continues. Over here, it's like 30 degrees Celsius. Over here, it's like 29. But regardless, very, very warm waters. And it's going to be rolling into those warm waters there. Not much wind shear concerned, acting against the system. Once again, those winds are not going to tear the system apart. It's pretty calm, relative to the hurricane. Except for the upper level venting, but that's just a part of the system. That's not going to do anything. So really little to no wind shear. As well as, the moisture levels seem to contain a fair good amount of moisture. So, once we get into these waters out here, I think this is where we're going to really start to really pick up some strength on the system. Really wouldn't be surprised if we get anything greater than Cat 3, to be honest with you. But obviously we got to go with the Hurricane Center and what they're saying right now. I'm only saying that because the last part of the cone has this thing already near, first of all, Category 4. It's just a few mile an hour shy, but also because of the conditions that are there, like I've mentioned, really, really warm waters, 30 Celsius. Once again, lack of wind shear, not much moisture deficiency going on. It'll allow for the system to really kind of grasp and really start to pick up. But anyways. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know. Let's see. How will those showers coming south affect Erin at all? What showers are you talking about? These? That is not going to do anything to the storm. But anyways, if y'all have any questions before I roll off here, let me know. We're probably going to roll off here pretty soon. Just wanted to kind of hop on here, do a bit of an update with you guys on the tropics here. Once again, we'll go live again tonight. We'll go live right around anywhere from 8 to 10 p.m. I don't like to make a specific time, but anywhere from 8 to 10 p.m. Just turn on notifications. Let me try that again. Let me just turn on... I give up. Goodbye, y'all. Kidding. No, but turn on those notifications. That way you guys can get notified when we do go live. Which that'll be, like I said, between 8 and 10 p.m. or so. So, anyways, Daily says smash the like button. It's very important. Support much appreciated. Thank you. I appreciate it, Daily. Greatly, greatly appreciated. But yeah, absolutely. Before I roll off here, I got to give a big thank you to Chris once again for the donation, my friend. I really appreciate it. You know, donations help keep us rolling, keep us afloat. Y'all obviously don't have to, but if you'd like to, we have the pinned comment there if you'd like to support what we do. It'd be greatly appreciated. Helps keep our programs going, so just appreciate it. But if not, totally okay. Just good to have you all here. Main thing is just keeping you guys updated. That's all we're here for. But anyways, folks. Well, yeah, if you have any more questions before I roll off, let me know, and we'll answer them. What is the pink box? So these boxes, the red boxes here, these are tropical storm and hurricane warnings. So the one for the island here, this is for the waters. This is not for the land areas. Tropical storm warnings in effect for some of the Antilles here. This is, you know, just saying that the waters out here are going to get a little rough, essentially. You know, talking about some pretty big waves and stuff like that. But, yeah, this does not apply for the land areas. It's just for the water. The hurricane warnings are in these 3 boxes here. Basically just saying, you know, hurricane conditions are going to be quite expected across some of these regions here. But anyways, oh, you're talking about these guys? These showers? Oh. Well, these will be likely long gone by the time that the system gets even close there. I mean, because you got to think, where the storm's at now, and over here by the H3, category 3, this is going to be on the 19th. That is 5 days away. These things will be long gone by then. Sharon says, I'm always late. What I miss? You missed the entire update, my friend. Yeah. Yeah, these guys, they're not going to do much. It just looks like normal thunderstorm activity. That's all it is. Just normal convection. But anyways, yeah, like I mentioned, though, I mean, the storm right now, it's definitely looking pretty good. Storm's definitely picking up on some activity and everything. But Sharon, if you want to rewatch the stream, just rewind, go back. We talked about everything, basically. But like I mentioned, anything, once again, beyond the cone, too early to tell. You know, anything beyond this point, models really want this thing to go out to sea, which is very possible. There's also been a lot of trends, though, westward. So we're going to have to watch and continue monitoring the trends to see if it continues going westward. It's not a guarantee, but we'll just see what happens with it. Really, only time can tell, you know. Really, only time can tell. But all right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining. I'm going to go ahead and roll off here for now. But once again, yeah, we'll be live again tonight, anywhere from 8 to 10 p.m. So turn on those notifications. That way you guys get notified. Subscribe if you haven't. Leave a like on your way out. It'd be greatly appreciated. Once again, Chris, thank you once again, dude, for subscribing. Well, that too. But thank you so much for the donation, my friend. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. You rock, dude. Big shout out goes out to you, Chris. But well, thank you all for joining. Greatly appreciate it. If you guys could share this channel too, you know, spread it to your Facebook, you know, your Twitter, whatever, just help spread the awareness, and that way people can stay up to date here. It would be greatly appreciated. But all right, everybody, thank you all for joining. You guys have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day. Once again, we'll catch you guys later tonight, anywhere from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. All right, everybody, thanks for joining. See you on the next one. Peace out, my friends. See you later on.